An all-new Subaru WRX might be just around the corner, but it's not quite here yet. Instead, we get to entertain ourselves with special editions while we wait. And this one is pretty special. It's the 2020 Subaru WRX Series.White. What makes it so special? That's what we're going to find out right now on Driving Sports TV.
The current generation Subaru WRX was all new in 2015. Since then, there's been some nips and tucks, but for the most part, it's still the same turbocharged, wide-bodied, all-wheel drive, four-door sedan we loved when Drake's Hotline Bling was still a thing. But time has moved on. Subaru has moved on. Have you seen the interior of the new Outback? It makes the WRX seem downright frumpy. As for power, the Outback is knocking at the door of the WRX with 260 turbocharged horses of its own. With an all-new WRX still a year away, Subaru's answer for 2020 is to build a special edition that updates the looks, the interior, and the performance of a WRX Premium. This is the 2020 Series.White. It will be limited to 500 units. Price as you see it here, $35,259 including destination. It still has a top-mounted intercooler feeding a direct-injected 2-liter turbocharged boxer motor. This setup is good for 268 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Though the standard WRX is still available with a CVT, this special edition is only available with a 6-speed manual transmission. And of course, it powers all 4 wheels with Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive. Features unique to the Series.White include upgraded Brembo brakes, bronze 18-inch alloy wheels wrapped in high-performance summer tires, and Sportune suspension with Bilstein dampers. It also has a shark fin antenna, LED fogs, LED headlights, blacked-out badging, and ceramic white paint. Instead of a wing, the trunk gets a more understated rear lip spoiler.
Easy release.
Inside, you have space for up to 12 cubic feet of gear. Under the floor is a space saver spare. Now let's take a look at the interior.
Given the market for this car, it's probably not surprising that there's very few amenities back here. Legroom also isn't the best. I mean, this seat is where I would put it, and I'm 6'1". I have a little bit of room, but it's not for long distance hauls, that's for sure. I do get an armrest here and cup holders, but nothing else.
Up front, the Series.White is very similar to a normal WRX with one notable exception. The seats have been upgraded with ultra-suede trimmed Recaros that are not only power adjustable, they're also heated.
Okay, this is an interior I am very familiar with. Nice, we got the multifunction gauge cluster with a little color screen in the middle. We also have a secondary display up here, which I like to set to show my turbo boost. And then below that, we have a smallish infotainment screen, but it is one of the more current setups from Subaru. It's a little multi-touch. It's a little glossy, but it's not too bad.
Plug in a mobile device for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay support.
Find the nearest Starbucks.
The closest one I found is Starbucks on 161st Avenue Northeast.
It's a little on the small side, but it's functional. We have no sunroof because that is actually a delete here, which helps keep the center of gravity as low as possible. Having that extra glass up there just adds unnecessary weight. Also, we have nicely bolstered Recaro seats. Steering wheel is covered in leather with some contrast stitching that, again, matches the Recaros. And then, of course, Subaru has their annoying controllers here, which I always think are just way too big for what they do. I want less stuff on my steering wheel, and that just seems unnecessary. They should just mount it up here, because it's not like you're constantly fiddling with that.
Since the Series.White is only available with a 6-speed manual transmission, that means it doesn't get Subaru's EyeSight safety system. Here, all you get are mirrors. Shift into reverse and you get a backup camera with fixed guides. The headlights are steering responsive LEDs, which is great to see. The aircon is still a basic single-zone system, which is disappointing at this price point.
Let's go ahead and take this out, see if it's still worth the money here in 2020, or if you should wait another year for the brand new model.
One reason I really like the WRX is its all-wheel drive system. Subaru has multiple systems under the symmetrical all-wheel drive banner. This particular manually equipped WRX gets the most basic setup: a center viscous coupler with a 50-50 torque split and vehicle dynamics control. Let's watch that again, this time in slow motion. You can see both the front and rear wheels engage immediately, with some hesitation on the back driver's side due to VDC detecting excessive slip and engaging the single wheel brake to redistribute power into the system. This simple but effective setup makes the WRX not just great for gravel, but paved surfaces as well.
Now, I have not driven a WRX since it launched 5 years ago. I mean, other than the 2004 that I owned until recently. And getting back into it, it is a little bit like a time warp. It has no blind spot warnings. You need to go up to a limited to get that. The interior is Subaru from 5 years ago, and if you've driven the new Outback, you know it looks a lot better now. But you don't get the WRX for these things, right? You get it for the performance. So let's go ahead and see what a 0 to 60 is going to do and see if it is still exciting in 2020. Unlike the Ford Mustang, this doesn't have any form of launch control. The only launch control is my foot. That actually makes launching a challenge because you have to really, it's a very fine line between wrecking your transmission and getting a good launch. So I'm going to kind of err on the side of caution, just try to get as good as I can without really abusing the transmission too much. And 3, 2, 1, go. A little bit of a bog off the line there. Oh, didn't shift quick enough. 50 and 60. Okay, I think we're gonna have to do a better job here. That wasn't very good. You know, launching a manual transmission turbo is not easy. I love launching these on gravel, but on asphalt where you have a lot of grip, especially when you have sticky summer tires like we have right now, you don't want to break the transmission. You don't really want to abuse it too much. 3, 2, 1, and go. A little boggy off the line, 20. Shifted 30, 40, 50, and 60. And of course I shift into third at 60, giving me optimal 0 to 60 performance. So how does that rack up to even like the less expensive Ford Mustang EcoBoost? Well, recently I did 6 seconds in the EcoBoost. Now granted, that was the high performance version, but that only adds like an extra 15 horsepower over the standard EcoBoost. So, you know, when you price this one versus the Mustang, yeah, they're about the same ballpark. And that's kind of funny because you wouldn't think, okay, a 2-door fastback versus a 4-door sedan, why would you compare those two? Well, it's because the WRX, like the Mustang, is a performance fun car. It isn't necessarily about practicality, although having 4 doors definitely makes the WRX the more practical sports car. I will admit that driving a Subaru WRX is kind of like coming home again. It may not be the newest, greatest everything, but you know where it all is. It's always in the same place. The seating position's a little bit higher than other sports cars. The gear shifter, I mean, the transmission has always felt great in this generation of car, and it still feels great here. The pedals are perfectly placed, which makes heel towing very easy. And of course, the fact that this is a 50-50 split on the all-wheel drive system. On the manual transmission, it's nothing fancy. It's just a 50-50 split, a power to the front and the back. So it's very predictable, making cornering very easy to do. And that makes me actually kind of wonder is, this generation of WRX has 268 horsepower. That is what? Let's do the quick math. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's what, about 50 horsepower less than a current STI. And you know, that's, once you're up to 268, that's plenty quick for 90% of drivers. In fact, I would say that unless you're tracking or actually racing in some capacity, be it rally or whatever, there's no real need to go to an STI in its current generation. Now granted, the STI will be all new in a couple years, and it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But I think that currently the WRX is just, it's great the way it is. Would I get this or would I wait? 1 year is not that far away, and given the current state of unpredictability in the economy, I'd probably wait a year, to be honest, see what the new WRX looks like. And then if you don't like it, you can get one of these. But you couldn't get a Series.White specifically because they're only building 500 of these. They're not individually numbered. Down here it just says WRX. But, you'll know that you do have a limited edition. And the new suspension, going tight around the corners. On the cement, we're going to get a little compression over this. Yeah! Oh. It handles those inconsistencies of the road so much better than the standard WRX suspension. In fact, I would position this as being a great alternative for high-performance driving to even the STI, which, though I love the STI, it is a little stiff for daily driving. Man, I just love driving this car. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what this next WRX is probably going to look like. I think it'll still be a 4-door sedan, maybe a slight fastback design, kind of lift the back up a little bit. It definitely will be all-wheel drive, there's no doubt there. But will it still have a manual transmission? I think that's one that's going to be really... It's going to come down to people internal at Subaru, whether or not they want to push that. And if they do push to keep a manual transmission, I bet it'll be this exact same transmission because they're not going to put any R&D money into it. Instead, I think we're going to see a focus on the CVT transmission in the new version, and I think we'll see some new stuff, stuff that you're seeing in all the other competitor vehicles, like launch control, for example. I think that'll probably be a base feature. I think we'll be looking, tapping on the door of 300 horsepower, especially because reports are that the STI is going to go up to 400 horsepower. And given Subaru's move-up market, that totally makes sense. I think that we'll see a much better interior. We'll see a big touch tablet here replacing the dual screens, like they've done in the Outback. And I think that we might even move to an all-digital display, although it depends on how affordable they want to keep this. They might keep an analog display for lower-end models. EyeSight may be standard on all models, and if it is, that means goodbye to the stick shift because they aren't necessarily, they don't work together. And it's even kind of funny when you look at this WRX in 2020, what it's missing, and it becomes way more obvious now than it did when it was first announced, when it first came out 5 years ago. I mean, this is based on a premium, the Series.White is, and it doesn't even have an option for blind spot warning. It doesn't have rear cross traffic alerts. With the stick shift, you can't get EyeSight. If you want to move up to a limited, which is the top end trim, then you get the leather interior, rear cross traffic. If you get the CVT, you get EyeSight. But there are some limits there as to what your options are. The Series.White being based on the premium means you can't get any of that. I mean, it's 3 pedals and a stick. That's what you get. And that is awesome. And will it continue on past this generation? I don't think it will. So if you want a stick shift and you want the best WRX and you want a limited edition, the Series.White is your game. I mean, this is the car you want because not only does it look great from the outside, it really drives great from the inside if you like that WRX driving dynamic. And the WRX driving dynamic is a lot different than, say, a Type R Honda Civic, which is a competitor in the class. The Type R Honda Civic is a blast, but it's a high-strung turbo front-wheel drive car that's technically a notch above the WRX. It kind of more competes with the STI. But I think given that this pricing is now mid-30s in this package, you're definitely knocking on the door of that Type R, and it should be a consideration at this price point. And I think you should drive both before making a decision because not everybody needs all-wheel drive, especially in the Sunbelt states. But if you do, and you like this seating position, and you like this driving dynamic, well, this Series.White is the car you've been waiting for.
What do you think the new 2021 Subaru WRX will look like? Post your predictions below. As always, please give a like and subscribe. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. We'll see you again next week, right here.